Hey everybody, and Tony here with a review of Dvorak's Rusalka, which I saw at the Komische Oper Berlin. The conductor was Henryk Nanasi, the production was done by Barry Kosky, the set designs and lights were done by Klaus Grünberg, the assistant director was Anisha Bondi, the costumes were done by Klaus Bruns, the dramaturgy was handled by Bettina Aua, and the chorus master was David Cabellos. This was also performed in German, with the text being done by Bettina Bartz and Werner Hünze, loosely translated from the original libretto written by Jaroslav Kvapil. Now, going to the production, I did not really care a great deal of it. It starts off with no sets whatsoever. It's basically an empty hall with a door in the center in which the characters use for entering and exiting the scene. Now, every time I think of any production of Rusalka, I want it to have magic. I want it to have mysticism and something that just captivates me. I want it to be set in forests or rivers and have trees and all those types of great scenery and have magic, whether it be in the home of the water nymphs to the palace involving the prince and the foreign princess and even the final scene. I would love to have a little bit of magic and just a lot of really great moments that will captivate me. In this production, not a lot of things captivated me, but kind of did the opposite in some of the scenes in which they frightened me and sort of made me feel kind of terrified and made me wonder, okay, I get that this is a dark fairy tale, but did this have to be shoved down our throats every single time with all the graphic violence of Rusalka's fin bones being removed? Well, it was quite disgusting to look at from time to time. Even when I saw the trailer, I was kind of put off with this production. But the costumes were at least elegant to look at. And from what I can tell, it seemed to be set in like the Victorian era as based on all the costumes. But they didn't really stand out in my opinion. But the only thing that stood out from this production was the effects that were done in the climax before Rusalka is completely abandoned by the water nymphs and before she kills the prince with her kiss of death. There was just a lot of pretty interesting imagery being used, with the hall being distorted and with the waves coming in, and I thought it was quite interesting, but not really enough to save my thoughts on the entire production. So overall, I didn't really care so much about the production, even though it had pretty costumes, and that's just it. Not really my cup of tea at the end of the day. Now we get to the singers, starting off with Nadia Makhantov as Rusalka. And what more can I say about this gorgeous lyric soprano? I've seen her show her stuff as Cendrillon about 3 months ago, and I thought she did fabulously. She was at her top game as Rusalka. She really knew how to be in great control of that lustrous, rich, and creamy lyric soprano instrument, which is so full of opulence, brilliance, and agility. She managed to sing her notes wonderfully, and she has a darling stage presence. She is so youthful on stage that every single moment she appears on stage, I'm just so full of awe and just so full of joy every time she's on stage. And I managed to really be involved in her portrayal of this wonderful character. She had the audience in the palm of her hand. She really knew how to use her voice in such a way that makes one's heart melt, and she had a very darling stage presence and a very feisty one at that, especially in terms of her meetings with the prince. And you can't help but feel sorry for her. This is a character who at first wants to be a human, but then is slowly discovering the consequences until she can no longer take it. You can't help but feel sorry for her every time she's on stage. And that is just how masterful Nadia Makantov is as both a singer and as an actress. She not only had a great voice, but she had a very great amount of acting chops to really represent herself wonderfully on stage. Singing the role of the prince was Welsh spinto tenor Timothy Richards. I first heard this gentleman perform some arias during my flight from Vancouver all the way to London before coming back to Berlin. And let me just tell you that my first impressions of his voice was very astounding, and rightfully so, when I saw this gentleman perform the role of the prince in Rusalka. He has a very round and rich timbre to his voice, and his singing was very fine. However, there's something that I felt was missing in his voice, and that is that sort of excitement that I would usually get from any spinto tenor who would sing the role of the prince. I just sort of missed that. Despite that, he compensates this shortcoming with elegance, style, and a very great timbre to really match his voice wonderfully, and he really knew how to be in great control of that round, rich, and agile spinto tenor instrument. And he was a very dashing figure on stage as well. Singing the role of Vodnik was Jens-Erik, and he was a phenomenal basso. He was tall, handsome, rugged, and had his own sense of charm and masculinity, which he embodied so wonderfully. He was able to be such a dominating force on stage. I was just at the edge of my seat every time he was on there. His voice was very well focused, and it was so great to not only hear those low notes, but he also used some of the high notes really wonderfully, showing that he has a great amount of versatility and masculine charm to really make this character come alive. And every time he opened his mouth, there were just goosebumps creeping up on me, because this voice, this basso profondo voice, is just so thrilling, and he really knew how to manipulate that voice wonderfully, that I can't just help but be at the edge of my seat every time he opened his mouth to sing, and it just feels so spellbinding. That's the word I want to use for this gentleman. He was so spellbinding in his execution with this character that I was completely immersed. Then we go to The Witch Yezibaba, sung by the fabulous contralto Nadine Weissman, who I also heard on the radio as Marie from Der Fliegende Holländer and Erda from Das Rheingold. She has a very phenomenal voice of size, beauty, and richness. She really knew how to use that grand contralto voice to her advantage, and she has a stage presence which can make men into boys and giants into men. In short, it is a very commanding, demanding, and absolutely dominating and thrilling stage presence. You bought it every time she was on stage, and you don't want to mess with her. She had a very strong and sturdy voice to back it up, and it just filled the house with excitement and just a lot of thrills. She really knew how to make this anti-villainess come alive, and she was absolutely in her A game with this wonderful, wonderful character role. Then we go to the Foreign Princess, sung by Ursula Hesse von den Steinen. What more can I say about Madame von den Steinen? She was absolutely fabulous. She continues to use that superb, dramatic mezzo-soprano instrument, and she was wonderfully catty. And even to that extent, wonderfully nasty. She was the absolute standout among the principals, and she really knew how to dominate the stage with that seductive figure that she manages to take a great advantage of. And she really knew how to portray glamour and a certain bitchiness to her character, which she excelled with flying colors. So overall, the principal players were absolutely in their A game, and they were all pros, giving off such great musicianship and great theatricality. Then we go to the minor roles, starting with the gamekeeper, sung by Ivan Tursic, who has a very superb character voice and is a very great actor. And in terms of Christiane Oertel's kitchen boy, while she acted the part really well, I did not really care for her voice in this particular role. Now, when I think of any voice singing the kitchen boy, even though it is a character role, I would usually like for it to be young and sparky, youthful, and just fun to listen to. With Christiane Oertel's voice, I heard a pretty wide vibrato when she reached the high notes, and it didn't really sound wonderful. Though she still had a very fine instrument, it's just that I did not really care for her in this role and would have wanted a younger singer. Then we have the likes of Annika Gerhardt, Maria Fisilier, and Katarzyna Wlodarczyk, who managed to bring to life the three wood nymphs with their charm and their sense of cheekiness and their sense of feistiness, and they really knew how to play off of each other wonderfully, and their voices blended like angels. And then we have Johannes Duntz as the hunter, who was an absolutely fine singer, even though his role was very, very short. Now, going back to what I thought about the production, we also had Yeji Baba's son, who basically speaks in gibberish and shouts a lot. I didn't know why he was there in the first place. I guess it's just to be the Igor to Yeji Baba's Dr. Frankenstein, but otherwise he was basically a throwaway character. Okay, so overall, the singing was absolutely wonderful all throughout, with the principals being the absolute standouts, from Nadia Makantoff to Timothy Richards to Jens-Erik Ashbø to Nadine Weissmann and to Ursula Hesse von den Steinen. If you guys are watching this video, then I have to say, you guys deserve a 2 thumbs up for me. Brava to all of you. You guys were absolutely excellent, and lots of love to all of your future engagements. And the conducting done by Henrik Nanasi was absolutely well done. It's very nuanced, and it really does carry the text along. And of course, I always anticipate the Song to the Moon, and with his superb conducting and Miss Makantoff's superb singing, I was almost about to well up. That is just how grand of a conductor he truly was. So overall, even though this production is not my cup of tea, I still have to give loads of kudos to all the singers for doing a very wonderful job, and of course, the wonderful conductor, Mr. Henrik Nanasi, for pulling everything together musically. Well, that's all for now. Be sure to tune in tomorrow for my review of Rossini's Il Barbiere di Siviglia, also at the Komische Oper Berlin. So until then, good night everybody, and have a great fall break.